What's up, everybody? Welcome to another discussion video. Today, we are going to be talking about one of my top 5 favorite games that you can see on supergen.tv. Look at everybody's bio, figure out what their top favorite games are. But the one we're talking about today is Alan Wake, the Xbox 360 slash
having some technicals
PC exclusive game.
I got it.
That Ryan just finished yesterday.
Wait, so do you know when it came out?
Yeah, 2010.
Okay, so it's aging like a fine wine, 7 years old.
Yeah.
Frame rate we're hearing is not so good. I didn't notice any stutters or anything.
Cares?
And to be completely honest, it makes me want to play more PC games. Like
you
it was
PC nerds.
Master Race.
Get out.
I'm converting. See, I started off as a Nintendo embryo, okay?
Yeah.
And then I was born
an embryo
as an Xbox, okay? And then played all my Xbox 360 stuff, Xbox One stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And then it was like, no, you're a man. So that's when I got into PlayStation. But now I'm finally like the butterfly flying away as a PC.
Now you're an angel.
So the final evolution,
PC.
Yeah, it's like the food chain, but not the food chain, but like the evolution scale.
Sure.
So it's good. Yeah, I know. So
cool.
No, I enjoyed it on PC a lot, but I definitely wanted to discuss it and everything because the end's one of those where it's like, what happened, you know? And there's so many different ways to interpret it, and I definitely wanted to hear how you interpret it because that's interesting.
I also want to throw a shout out to Alan Wake. If this piques your interest on Alan Wake, the only way you can get it now is pre-owned through GameStop or eBay or whatever, because they lost the licensing for some of the music they had in the game. So the game has been taken down off of all the online stores, i.e. Steam and Xbox Store and stuff like that.
For the record, I'm going to say Quantum Break was better. So just go ahead and buy Quantum Break.
I disagree, but we'll get into that.
Okay. So wait, just some things I initially need to get off my chest.
Sure.
I was telling you this. The game wants to be a platformer, but it's not a platformer.
Sure.
Because controlling Alan Wake was like driving a truck, but it continues to pull in the wrong direction where you don't want it to go. Yeah. Like there's something weird with
even
the
camera. Driving sections felt like
exactly, yeah. The driving was weird, but there'd be like little platforming where you'd be on top of things. You need to jump and follow this one little path ahead. And there'd be so many times like, and I fell off the side. And it's like, dude, you're not a platformer. Like it's about the story. And I was kind of upset that they did stuff like that. But it didn't take away. One other thing was, though, the farther you got into the game, the more it was like story intense, but the more they just drew it out. You know, where it's like, you're here now. You got to get all the way back to the lake, and we're gonna make it like a half an hour, 45 minutes for you to get there, and it's just more people coming out of the woods, you know, wanting to kill you, get some batteries. I'm running out of batteries. Thankfully, let me just run to lampposts, and then they all disappeared. I like that little concept.
Yeah. But
I have to throw out those two things that I'm a little peeved about.
Sure.
Other than that, it was excellent.
I totally agree. I played this game way back when it was like still relatively
Good Matt Skiba song.
Yeah, and so like I don't know. So I guess I didn't notice stuff like that as much. But like playing it now, you can definitely like tell
it's dated minorly.
Yeah, that there's like this is not a game that was made recently.
But not bad. It doesn't. It's not like don't. Play
exactly. Like that doesn't take away from it, and it's like the story and the themes of the game like work really well. Still, like those still hold up, especially since it's like I would still call it like a horror game, but not necessarily a survival horror, and definitely not like a jump scare horror either. Like there were parts that kind of like. Made me jump a little bit, like that, you know, kind of creeped me out and stuff. Yeah. But like I loved the settings, and what's really cool about this game is that like it took heavy inspiration from like Stephen King novels, which is really cool, and like the TV show Twin Peaks, that's really good. That just had a resurgence. They just released a new series for it.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of like that, like backwoods kind of like, you know, old town, everybody knows everybody's name, you know, that kind of thing, like real quiet town, and then you show up and like all this crazy stuff starts happening. So I really like that. Like I just really like the setting.
You only show up on vacation.
Yeah.
So it's pure coincidence.
But you're technically not even on vacation.
No.
As you come to find out that this was a trick by your wife. Because that's why they get into the whole fight that spawns literally the entire game.
Yeah.
Is based on just this fight that they had. Because Alan has writer's block, so he can't, you know, write his stories anymore. He's having this thing. So his wife says, we're going to take you on this nice trip. It's going to be great. We're quiet, you know. Hey, I'm going to surprise you with a typewriter. Maybe you can get some writing done here. And he goes, this was supposed to be a trip away from work. Like, you know I'm struggling with this. Like, why would you bring this with us on our vacation? So he gets upset whenever they get into this fight.
Yeah.
Wife has a chronic fear of the dark, which is why the main bad guy in this game pretty much is like darkness, which is why you have
it's not a person, it is just darkness.
It is darkness,
the antagonist.
And so obviously that plays the whole thing. His wife gets kidnapped by the darkness and he has to figure it out. But then he soon turns to find out that the what he's writing in his book and like what he writes for the novels is what's happening. Like he's almost in one of his horror novels.
Yeah.
Which I find to be really cool, and I just think it's like a really cool concept. So
now he was forced to write that though. True or false?
Right.
by
what's that?
Barbara, taken over by the darkness.
Yeah, parts of it, yes. But
So
then
he
there were
really
other
couldn't
parts
write
where
his own
he
story.
wrote. Yeah, at the beginning, but then, as you go through, he eventually does, like, get the power to, like, write his own story and, like, write his own ending and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is, like, the whole, like, ending of the game. Is, like, him writing his own story.
Okay. So wait, couple questions right off the bat.
Yeah.
So there was, like, Scratch Alan and there was normal Alan. Because you see where they're at the parts where it's like, hey, you'll know these people, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, is the Alan that's stuck in the house at the end of the game normal Alan or Scratch Alan?
There is no Alan in the house at the end of the game.
At the typewriter. What did I fail?
That's not the end. That's not, like, the end.
What's the end of it?
The end is, like, when it's, like, zooming out of the house and stuff. Alan, at the end of the game, like, Alan is trapped in the lake where his wife was.
Yeah.
And his wife comes out of the lake, and he saves his wife.
But then it shows him at the typewriter, correct?
I don't remember.
So, no, the end of the game is him at the typewriter typing away at the end of the story, and kind of the world around him is engulfed by darkness. And instead of, like, the darkness just being confined to the lake, it's being confined to the entire,
town.
surrounding. Yeah, which is kind of then when he says, no, it's not a lake, it's an ocean, which I don't know how you interpret that. I kind of want to know how you interpret that.
Yeah.
Is it that, like, the darkness is now spread and it's bigger than he remembered, being just this one little, on this lake where all this stuff was happening, you'd write about and it'd come true there?
Mm.
Or what? How did you take that line as?
I think what he means by that is more of, like, where he goes, oh yeah, it's not just a lake, is, like, that's part of it. But then, like, I think the whole adventure throughout the entire game of, like, when he was going through the town and, like, these nice people were, like, being possessed and he had to fight those things, and, like, by an ocean means, like, I think it's not necessarily, he's not talking about, like a spot or, like, the fact that it was confined to the lake and now it's confined to everything else.
Yeah.
I don't think he's talking about, like, geographical or, like, realism or anything. Mm-hmm. I think what he means is, like, it's so much bigger than we thought. Like,
100%.
That the darkness is, like, this thing, and it's not necessarily just confined to the lake or anything, but it's, like, it started out as something we didn't know a lot about, but now it's, like, we kind of realize, like, oh, we thought this was a lake, we thought it was, like, a small problem we could handle. Now we realize it's not, and it's this huge, like, entity that, like, somebody's going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Thomas Zane.
Yeah.
Is he Alan's father?
No.
No?
No.
Is that confirmed here?
Yeah, because Alan Wake would have known if that was his father.
Okay, not only that, but there's kind of like, you get the thought process of, I don't know if either I was reading this online or I kind of got the vibe from the game, is like Thomas Zane wrote this story. Was Alan just part of Thomas Zane's story?
That's possible. I've heard that that's a theory, but I choose not to believe it.
Why not?
Because I just don't like that. I like Alan Wake as, like, his own guy. Like, I like to believe that Alan is, like, a real person, like Alan and his
But
wife
that's not saying
and all
he's
that.
not a real person. That's like saying, are our destinies like we could do whatever we want, or are we on this one path and no matter our decisions, we're still going to
Sure.
kind of get to that end result? Whereas like Alan Wake, he was on that one path because he was written on that path.
See, I don't.
So it's
I
not
don't
saying
think
he's just
so.
a figment of this fiction that this guy
Right,
wrote that
but,
turned
like,
into real
his
life.
choices and stuff have been dictated by.
Exactly, like his path was already chosen.
Yeah, which
Think
I
of like
also-
Donnie Darko when the stuff comes out of the stomach too. 'Cause
Yeah.
there were kind of some similarities with that movie too,
I
which
agree.
is why I dug it.
I still don't think so. I think Zane, because what was Zane's thing? It's been a really long time since I've played it, but Zane was also a writer.
Yeah.
And he was trapped in the darkness, wasn't he? He had the light room.
No, he brought Barbara back, and she came back with the darkness and everything, and that's when he tried to like cut
And
her heart out or something.
Barbara's the woman
Or
you
cut the
meet at the
darkness
beginning
out?
of the game, right?
Yeah,
Like when
with the
you're
key.
and you're like in the
Correct.
back and all that. But then there's like the creepy. Remember the creepy old lady who's like, "Don't go in there. It's not good to go in the dark." And then she takes you to the light room. You know,
Yeah,
or the well lit
that's
room.
Cynthia somebody.
Yeah, okay,
she's,
I couldn't remember her
she's
name.
a completely different character.
Right, exactly. But her and Zane
Yeah.
were friends, and Zane and his wife, who was possessed now by darkness,
Yeah.
was not Cynthia. What was the other one's name?
Barbara.
Barbara.
Yeah.
It was Zane's wife.
Yeah.
And so he saves her, and he's like in the whole like scuba diving suit and all that, and,
Yeah.
and everything.
BioShock.
So yeah, very Bioshock-esque. And so that was his wife. He saves his wife, but like then it's like, well, where is Thomas Zane now? Like obviously he talks to you, and he's like at the beginning of the game,
Which
like,
is why I
when,
need to
God
replay the
gives you
game.
a gun.
Correct, because I want to kind of start connecting all the dots too.
Right.
Because your first playthrough is just like learning everything and being like, oh, this is how it ends. Now let me pick up on every little thing that they put along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And now that you know who the characters are and everything.
Right, it's definitely a better to go through and play. And I feel like so much in this game was set up.
Yeah.
Like they honestly didn't go that much into like who Thomas Zane was and like who all these other side characters were or anything.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is so much better suited for like a sequel, if that ever happens, where it's like, hey, we're gonna go like more in depth in the world and like these are the characters and these are the things.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're ever gonna get a sequel. If we do, it'll be another 15 years.
See, I want to know, like, so your thoughts on Alan at the end of the game are what?
On the game or on the character?
No, at the end of the game, like, what are his whereabouts? Is he...
He's in the lake.
So he's in the
possessed,
lake.
trapped under the lake. The same place his wife was.
Okay.
Throughout the entirety of the game.
And now, since he killed Barbara with the clicker,
mm-hmm.
is he now the owner of the darkness, basically? Like, it can.
I don't think he's the owner, but I think by killing Barbara and getting her out of the picture, I feel like almost Barbara might have been a key in and of itself, where she was like a minion, like holding the darkness back, kind of, and that was just like the little feeler was Barbara. And then once he like cut that off, now the darkness is just spewing, and now he's trapped in the darkness, which is the lake. But he saved his wife. That's why his wife is alive at the end, you know?
Yeah.
But now he's trapped.
See, I was just going to say, I kind of like Alan Wake 2 to be like where Alan Wake was a character designed by Thomas Zane. Okay? But he's still a real person and everything.
Okay.
However, like his destiny was already out ahead of him, and he could only fulfill that destiny because that's what was written, you know, at that specific place where it all manifests and come true. However, Thomas Zane's intentions were for the darkness, okay? Where he knew Alan would be the perfect character. Like, I can set him up perfectly because through his emotional relationships and all this, his wife's afraid of the darkness. Oh, I can write this in perfectly. Like, this is going to be the greatest novel ever written, blah, blah, blah. And then I can reenact it and everything, too. Where he totally lines it up, where, you know, his wife basically gets consumed by the darkness, Alan's wife, that is. Because Barbara did, too. Right. But, so Alan rescues his wife from the darkness, which I interpret the ending as now Alan kind of, the darkness consumes him. Mm-hmm. So now he's like starting to manifest himself as the keeper of the darkness. And I think he can now fulfill this huge destiny with the darkness, where it's going to be like one of those events where instead of him saving everything, he kind of turns into be like the head guy of it, you know?
Oh, see, I
like with all this power, it doesn't get to his head, but that would be awesome.
That would be really cool, and I'd like to play that story.
Oh, come on.
But the end of this game was such a cliffhanger. Like, this did not wrap up the game.
Oh, not at all.
Not even in the
slightest. And here's the thing, too. Like, when you're playing the end of the game, and it gets to the one point where, like, Alan and his wife are in bed, and then the lights go out, and his wife's not afraid of, like, being in the dark, and you know something's weird. Mm-hmm. I thought the game was just going to end and it'd be like, Alan wakes up, and it was all a dream. Yeah. Like, at one point, I was like, it's just going to be one of those, and I was going to be like, please don't do that.
Right.
But, yeah, they do good in everything going through it. However, I kind of interpret the end of the game a little bit differently.
Sure.
Whereas at the end, yes, there's like, I think there's a big part of the game where there's like the two Allens, the Scratch Alan and the regular Alan. Real Alan, I feel like, is stuck in the cabin at the typewriter typing the story. And he continually says throughout the game, like, hey, it can't just be a happy ending and not everybody can win. It has to be you have to give some in order to give some. Right. Yeah, you have to give some in order to get some. And there's going to be like darkness and not everybody's going to prevail. And he almost gives up himself in order to save his wife.
Totally agree.
So the way I don't know. No, because I watched it all the way through, and when it hit the credits, that's when I was like, whatever, I'll let the credits go through. And I didn't see if there was a post-credit scene or anything, which is what I don't know if you're referring to. But I just remember at the end, it shows him in the cabin at the typewriter and just darkness around him, and then it just pans out, and that's kind of like the end of it, which leaves it open for interpretation. But I personally think if Alan comes back in a future game, it's going to be the Scratch Alan that's in the real world that his wife, you know, interacts with, anything like that, where it's not Alan that knows all this story and has been through the real Alan is stuck in this house at the typewriter, you know, living his own, I don't want to say nightmare, but like he knew that's what he had to do in order to save his wife. So he has like the eternity of the darkness until the next person. Like if Alan Wake 2 were to happen, he would have to write a new character, much like if I'm saying Thomas Zane wrote Alan, and this new character is going to come in and save Alan.
So Thomas Zane was the first game in this series.
Correct.
Alan Wake is essentially Thomas Zane 2, and Alan Wake 2 is going to be the Alan Wake to Thomas Zane.
It's like, think of everything where like the first, like robots or anything, the first gen models, garbage, you wait for the second gen, anything.
Right.
Thomas Zane was like the first gen person who kind of got caught in this darkness, okay? Alan Wake is now the second gen person. Now the third gen person, I think Alan's aware that, hey, in order to get myself out of this, get me reunited with my wife, Alice and all that, I need to write somebody who comes in with another way to defeat the darkness, take this from me, and then still write a way for that person to survive.
Very interesting.
That's the only way I'm thinking. So right now, Alan, we're like whoever's making this, in the mind of the creative people making this, he is stuck inside that house, and he has to write himself out or find a way to get out of that through that. You know, Alan Wake 2 should just completely be one of those like text-based games where you're literally writing it. Okay. And when it just doesn't work, it's just like, sorry, game over. But that's how I see it in everything.
So then you asked me later too about like the DLC, like what's called the writer and the.
Well, there's American Nightmare.
Well, American Nightmare is the one I want to get to last because that's like a real DLC.
Yeah.
But there's the writer and
the Signal.
The Signal, yeah, and those both are like set still in the world, and I forget like where they take place, but I think it's afterwards. But it doesn't give you any more to the story. It's just kind of like Alan surviving in the darkness.
Okay.
And so it's really weird, and like the gameplay is weird.
Like comfort food, more of the same. We're getting into the story, but hey, you like this,
right? And then same with American Nightmare, but that was like that was a standalone where you could buy that. Like you could go and buy American Nightmare, and without ever having bought, owned, played the original Alan Wake, but you could just buy American Nightmare for $14.99 and play through that story.
But here's my question: Signal and Writer, are those only on Xbox? Do you know?
I think they're on PC too.
Now, do you have to beat the game in order to play them?
I don't know.
Okay. Because I know I beat it on PC and I don't have the options for those two, and I don't want to replay it on Xbox.
Yeah.
With those controls now.
So the American Nightmare though, what that was so you saw the Night Springs, like the TV show, right?
Yeah.
And so Alan was actually a writer for the show Night Springs. He was one of the writers. So American Nightmare is like essentially one of his episodes.
Yeah.
And so what it is you're at this like drive-in movie theater where it takes place, and you have to play through the same like world 3 times. So you play through once and you beat the guy, and then you're through, and then like it just like restarts you, and you have to like it's like the episode is this guy has to relive his life like over and over again until he figures it out.
Yeah.
So you have to play through it 3 times, and what sucks is that it's like it gets like crazy repetitive. Not only because you're replaying the same area again, but it's like all the stuff you're doing again. So there's a part where like this you have to make this satellite like crash into this radio tower. You do that. You have to do that for all 3 parts, and you do it in the same way every time, and it gets kind of repetitive. But the thing is, the bad guy in that is Mr. Scratch, who is Alan Wake, who is like the alternate Alan Wake. And so at the end of that DLC, you fight him and you kill him at the end of American Nightmare.
Okay, no,
yeah, you kill Mr. Scratch, which is why I think. But the way they sold it when Remedy was talking about this, they're like, yeah, this is like not totally unrelated, but they're like, yeah, this is pretty much unrelated. Like
another story with the universe.
It's like this is just another story. Like this, you're playing through an episode of a TV show. Like this isn't like a continue of Alan Wake's like main story, but this is just like more like world building kind of thing, like more in this universe.
Yeah. But a good note to end it on though.
Like,
oh wait, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just saying, it's cool and like it's still fun and it's worth playing, and you have like tons of different guns, and like the gameplay's a lot different than like regular Alan Wake and stuff. But at the same time, it's still just kind of like I wish there was an Alan Wake 2. You know what I mean? Like I wish like that was part of it. But then what's so cool is their next game, Quantum Break, when that came out, that was awesome, and you could definitely tell. Like they took a lot from Alan Wake to put into Quantum Break. Yeah. Not only because the name sounds.
I was gonna say just the rhyming kind of structure.
Yeah. But like the way the gameplay worked in that, like the story elements, like the way they did their storytelling was like I don't know if you remember this, but at the beginning of Quantum Break, when you're on the campus and you're talking to the one chick who's like hungover or whatever, and she's been like sitting out all night. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And then you walk into the little tent, and they're playing Alan Wake in the tent, and so you can go up and look at the TV, and. Or no, they're not. I think they're playing It's Night Springs or it's Alan. I think it was Alan Wake though.
Yeah, something from that game though.
Yeah, and so it either says Alan Wake or it says Night Springs on there, which I thought was really cool. Like that was a throw. Like they were kind of like still like not like yes, we haven't completely forgotten about Alan Wake. Like it is not like dead. Like we're still like paying homage to it in this other game, in this new game, which I love. And Quantum Break I thought was awesome. That was one of my favorite games of last year. And so like Remedy, I think is an incredible studio where they also made like the original Max Payne games, and stuff like that. And they always do like something kind of weird to make it work. But yeah, like I would love to have Alan Wake 2.
Yeah, this is the perfect way to close it. You want Alan Wake 2? I want Alan Wake Prequel to know why the darkness chose Zane and how he became associated with it, because that story is almost more interesting to me. I'd rather get that backstory first, where the darkness came from, and then wrap up the trilogy with Alan Wake 2, or whatever you want to call it, where it shows how, I was kind of saying, where Alan writes this next character who saves it all and rids everything of the darkness.
Now, the thing is, so right here, even on screen, they're talking about the manuscripts. Did you find all the manuscripts?
I didn't go through
Did you read them?
No.
Read them, because that's a real story. That's a story that he wrote. and some of the stuff that he writes in there is what happens like maybe like 10 minutes later in the game. Okay. So you find a manuscript piece and you read it, it's like, oh, and so-and-so gets attacked by a maniac with a chainsaw. And that's when you get to like the logging yard and the dude comes out with the chainsaw and stuff. Yeah. And so that goes through all those things. So like it's weird. It's like, oh, you're finding these pages that are like describing like events that are like about to happen. It's like, who wrote these to get them here? But apparently, clearly Alan Wake did, because he just had the title page of Departure by Alan Wake. Yeah. So it's like, is Alan writing this story, and like, is this whole game his way of breaking through his writer's block?
That's like the beauty of it, is how it's open for interpretation. How do you know?
Exactly. And no one's ever come out and confirmed anything. Like, this game could be so many different things, and that's why I think I like it so much. Is that like it is like this game really is like a unique storyline, I think. Yeah. Gameplay wise, it feels kind of dated. Graphics wise, definitely not the best, but it's like still the story and like all the characters and everything like just like suck you in, and it's like, this is awesome. Like, this is just a great story. Just kind of like sit down, play for 12 hours or however long it takes you, and like get through it. So
yeah, it's definitely good. Highly recommended.
Yeah, definitely recommend. If you haven't played it, find a copy and play it now. Even though we kind of spoiled it for you.
All about
like,
for the prequel.
But like, it's still, we didn't spoil like everything. You know?
No, it's like, but that's like saying, if there's a TV show where I want you to watch, I kind of need to tell you more than you need to know and get into spoilers, and then you'll watch it.
But the thing is, too, it's even like the way, even though if we tell you the end, like the end is Alan saves his wife. And that's the essentially the same thing as at the end of Mario saves Peach. Yeah. Like
you know it's going to happen either way.
Who cares?
It only has one of two
that's
ways.
What it was going to be. Yeah. But it's like getting there and figuring out like everything that happened in between, like who Thomas Zane is, who Cynthia is.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Exactly. Like all of that is like where like the fun and where the gameplay takes place. So it's like knowing the ending, knowing these like kind of like key points are like not really going to ruin the game. Real quick, I want to ask, what was your favorite part?
I don't know. I'm kind of biased after you told me how good it was, where it kind of like shows him go back and everything after he's going to the Andersons' farm, and then they start drinking the moonshine, and then it kind of does the flashback as to what really happened. That was cool. Off the top of my head, that's a really good question.
Yeah. It was also good. You can't.
Yeah, it's like the whole story. I could tell you my least favorite part is every time I saw like a machine or a car or something, I was like, I know I'm gonna have to fight this.
That, yeah.
Like how many times?
Because it took forever to kill it, like to wear like the darkness armor down and like get it.
Honestly, when you say what's your favorite part, my favorite part is like dissecting the story after it's done to try to make sense of it. Totally because it's like each piece of it along the way is equally as important.
Right.
And without that,
but how cool was that? Where you had to defend the stage and you had like all the fireworks and the sparklers and everything. You know what I'm talking about?
That was pretty cool.
That was my favorite part. I thought that was so cool. And then the other thing I want to throw a shout out to is the music in this game. Yeah, was awesome. They actually got a real band called Poets of the Fall,
David Bowie,
like Swedish or something, and they're awesome. Or they're Finnish, because Remedy is a Finnish studio from Finland. Yeah. And it's awesome, and the main song was called War in this, and it was super cool. And there's a whole part where it plays the song, and it plays it louder than it ever did in any other song. And like they play it loud and like clear and everything, and you have to defend this barn. You're not defending, but you have to like fight in this barn or whatever the entire time as this song is playing. And I just thought that was so cool. I'm like, oh, this is like music is like a huge part of this game, and like the fact that you have like the old gods of Asgard and stuff was that band Poets of the Fall recording other songs just for this game under the guise of the old gods of Asgard, who you meet as like 80-year-old dudes in this game, and they were like a 70s like hair metal band, and now they're like old.
Which still is like, hey, we're not going to get into this conversation, but like it leads to the question, hey, were they actually crazy, or were they just normal people in that town, part of like Alan's whole psyche? You know, there's so much you could go into. Like,
you could go so in deep on everything, which I think is awesome, and that's like the beauty.
We'll do like
the
the Ken Burns baseball on Alan Wake. Yeah. Once I play through like 2 or 3
just dissect like every line. Yeah.
So that's why it's so good.
But
that's why it's so
either way, go play Alan Wake. Figure out a way to get it. It's got to be like $10 at GameStop or something like that. It's going but it'll probably go up because you can't download it anymore. So, go check it out. And this has been another Super Gen discussion about one of my favorite games of all time, Alan Wake. Anything else? Closing comments, concerns, questions?
Are you asking the peanut gallery?
I'm asking you.
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Till next time.
We're good. All right. Peace out.